I have now tested a whole bunch of Zigbee adapters, whether it's a cheap one that obviously has the disadvantage of not being able to support as many Zigbee devices, the now very well-known Combi, or the recently released Home Assistant Sky Connect stick. However, all of these adapters have one thing in common: a USB connection. What may not initially sound like a disadvantage can actually be quite annoying in some cases, as you have to work with at least one USB adapter to get the Zigbee connectivity out of the rack, so that the rack enclosure doesn't kill the connection. But also in other cases, for example, when you do not have your Zigbee server directly with your Home Assistant, because for instance, your server rack is in the basement, it can be extremely impractical. Or if you want to run your Home Assistant in a redundant setup, theoretically, it would be possible to set up a second Home Assistant server just like the first one and then simply start it up when needed should anything happen to the main server. However, it is of course very impractical if you then have to unplug a USB connector. And that's why I would like to introduce you to a Zigbee adapter today that is supposed to solve these problems. Specifically, one with a very, very large antenna, but also a network connection that even supports PoE. More details after the intro. Enjoy. Before we close this thing up and try it out, let's take a quick look at the outside. As mentioned, it has a very, very large antenna. I hope that means the reception is also very, very good. We have a network connection and a USB-C port. The special thing is that we have the USB-C connection as an optional feature. So you can, yes, that's fine, thank you. Now, let's continue. One can use the USB-C connection for power supply, but theoretically it could also be connected directly via PoE. This means that if your switch router supports PoE, you could theoretically save on the power supply for it. In my case, I'm just connecting everything via USB-C for now, and then we still need to connect the adapter to the network. So it should now appear on the network. I just copied the IP address from the router, and then I was able to access the interface here. Now we can configure a few settings. On one hand, of course, firmware updates, but we can also use static IP addresses instead of DHCP, switch back and forth between Ethernet and Wi-Fi, and that's actually pretty cool. Directly integrate everything into ZHA or Zigbee MQTT. Actually, we don't need to change anything for this. We just need to copy the configuration we want from the config generator down here. I would like to use Zigbee MQTT, so I will copy that out here. I then insert the configuration I copied into Serial and click on Start here in the information section, and I can then see in the log how everything is booting up. Ideally, I would then see Zigbee MQTT starting here at the end and therefore know that everything has worked. So I can now go to the interface and use it as if I had connected a USB adapter. I have here as an example a socket, so we can try it out. Just plug it into the power, and now I can click on Activate here, and we can already see that the socket is connected normally. I can click on it here and of course rename it as well. Of course, also rename the test socket Home Assistant entity. And now I just need to integrate MQTT into Home Assistant. So I will send it here, and then there should be two devices under MQTT representing our test socket, which I should also be able to see in the overview and control, of course. As you can see, it's a really cool device. The nice thing is you can theoretically do even more. If you look at the web interface here, you have the option to integrate your own MQTT server. So theoretically, one could completely skip ZHA or Zigbee MQTT and directly integrate everything here via MQTT and Home Assistant Auto Discovery. One can also integrate a WireGuard server here as well. Here, you just need to install updates and adjust a few settings. It's really a very, very cool device. The whole thing is actually based on an ESP that is built into it. One could theoretically build it oneself. However, I think with the case and everything that comes with it, it's really quite a nice package. Of course, it costs a little bit more than a typical Zigbee adapter, but ideally, it should mean significantly less effort, as Zigbee adapters can always be a bit, let's say, tricky to integrate, because Zigbee is also a very error-prone signal. So if it is too close to any Wi-Fi antenna, or even when it is plugged into a USB port, there are always issues with the USB adapters. That should not be the case here. You can position it very nicely so that it is in the perfect range of all other Zigbee devices. I will definitely include the link to it in the description below. Feel free to check it out, and if you enjoyed the video, please show it with a rating. I would say see you in the next video. Until then, take care and goodbye, you sand.